Okay, let's talk about Sigmund Freud. You've heard the name, right? He's one of the most famous and, let's be real, controversial figures in all of psychology. Today, we're going to dive into his map of the human mind and break down his big three ideas: the id, the ego, and the superego. So let's start with the most obvious question. Why are we still talking about this guy? I mean, a lot of his ideas seem, well, pretty out there by today's standards. And I mean, seriously out there. Freud might say something like, "You bite your nails? That probably stems from an unresolved issue with breastfeeding when you were an infant." It sounds kind of wild, doesn't it? And it's so easy to hear stuff like that and just dismiss the whole thing. But here's the thing, and it's really important. If you can look past some of those more, let's call them creative claims, his overall framework is actually an incredibly powerful tool. It gives us this really unique window into understanding ourselves, into understanding the hidden reasons why we do the things we do. Especially the things we do without even knowing why we're doing them. To really get what Freud was talking about, you have to start with his most famous analogy for the mind. Just picture a giant iceberg. You know how you only see that little tip sticking out of the water, but the truly massive, dangerous part is all hidden underneath? Well, Freud said our minds work exactly like that. That little bit you see above the water, that's your conscious mind. It's everything you are actively aware of in this very moment. The sound of my voice, the thoughts running through your head, maybe you're feeling a little hungry, all that stuff. It's the small, visible part of who you are. But the real story, according to Freud, is everything happening below the surface. That huge, invisible mass of ice, that's the unconscious mind. And you can't just decide to take a peek at it. Freud believed this is where the real action is. It's packed with all these powerful thoughts, forgotten memories, and deep urges that are secretly pulling all the strings in your life. So, what kind of stuff is hiding down there? Well, it's not a treasure chest of happy memories, that's for sure. The unconscious is more like a locked basement where we shove everything we don't want to think about. We're talking painful trauma, deep-seated rage, desires that society tells us are wrong, and the mental bouncer that shoves all that dark stuff down and keeps the door locked. That's a defense mechanism he called repression. Okay, so we've got this vast, hidden, unconscious mind. But how does it actually, work? Well, Freud said it's the home base for the first of three warring factions inside your head. And this first one is a purely primal drive he called the id. And what's so cool is that the original German name tells you everything you need to know. Freud didn't call it the id, he called it das Es, which literally translates to the it. Think about that. Not the me, but the it. That's because it's this raw, impersonal, totally irrational force. This is the part of your personality you're born with. It's basically a newborn baby that does nothing but scream for what it wants right now. The id lives by one single rule, the pleasure principle. If it feels good, do it. Immediately. There is zero logic, zero patience, and absolutely no concern for the consequences. It's the complete opposite of the reality principle, which, is the part that understands you can't just grab a candy bar and walk out of a store. And this fundamental clash between I want it now and, whoa, hang on a second, that's the engine that drives your entire personality. So, just to sum it up real quick, the id is all about the pleasure principle. Its only goal is getting what it wants right this second. It lives entirely in that hidden, unconscious part of your mind, and it's home to our most primal, animalistic drives, what Freud called eros, the drive for life and survival, and thanatos, which is, believe it or not, a self-destructive death instinct. All right, so if we've all got this screaming primal it inside of us demanding everything, how do we function in society? How does anything ever get done? Well, that's where the second part of the puzzle comes in, the ego. In German, the ego is das Ich, which just means the I. This is you, the self that has to deal with the real world. The ego develops specifically to handle the id's constant demands, and it operates on that reality principle we just talked about. Its whole job is to figure out, okay, how can I get the id what it wants, but in a way that won't get me fired or arrested or kicked out of the family? Freud had this brilliant analogy for it. He said the id is like a powerful wild horse. It's got all the energy, all the raw power, and the ego? The ego is the rider, sitting on top of this powerful beast, desperately trying to steer it, trying to keep it from running off a cliff. A lot of the time, the ego is just holding on for dear life. So the ego's main job is to be the great moderator. It knows it can't just tell the id no, because that would create a huge internal conflict. So instead, its primary strategy is delayed gratification. It basically tells the id, okay, I hear you. You want that cookie? We're going to get the cookie. But first we have to finish our work, then cookie. Now, if it was just a battle between the wild horse id and the sensible ego, life would be complicated enough. But there's a third character that shows up on the scene, usually around age 5, and it's here to judge everybody. Meet the superego. And once again, the German name is just perfect. The superego is über-ich, which means over I. It's this sense of a moral authority that is literally over you, constantly watching and judging. This is your conscience. It's the voice of your parents, your teachers, and all of society's rules that you've absorbed over the years. The superego doesn't care about what's realistic or what feels good. It only cares about one thing: being perfect. The superego is that nagging voice in your head that's always pushing you to be some kind of impossible, ideal version of yourself. It's constantly judging everything you do, and even everything you think. And what happens when you inevitably fail to meet its sky-high standards? It punishes you with heavy feelings of guilt and shame. If you've ever felt like you're just never, ever good enough, well, you've probably got an overactive superego. So what we have is this constant three-way civil war going on inside our own heads. We've got the primal id, the realistic ego, and the moralistic superego, all pulling in different directions. So let's see how this plays out in a really simple everyday situation.
So imagine you have a huge test tomorrow. Your id is screaming, "Oh, forget this book, let's go watch videos, that's instant fun." Then your ego, the mediator, steps in. "Okay, new plan. How about we study for 2 solid hours, and then as a reward, we can zone out on social media?" But just as you agree, the superego comes crashing in. 2 hours? Are you kidding me? You need to be perfect. An A+ is the only option. You can't stop studying, ever.
And that little internal battle right there, that's the heart of Freud's entire theory. He believed that your personality, your decisions, your habits, your anxieties, is simply the outcome of this constant, messy negotiation between what you desperately want to do, what you realistically can do, and what you feel you should do. So I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. As you go about the rest of your day, just pay attention to that inner monologue and ask yourself, which force is winning inside you right now? Is it the impulsive id, the practical ego, or that judgmental superego? The answer might just tell you a whole lot about the invisible forces shaping your life.